DW Africa Link.
The president of Kenya, William Ruto, has been ranked as the second most corrupt leader in the world. The list of the world's most corrupt persons in 2024 was compiled by the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. That's the OCCRP. Now, according to them, Ruto received the most public nominations in the organization's history. The only person who beat him to the number one spot was ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. So how did President Ruto get here? And what are the possible effects of this on Kenya and the continent as a whole?
You can clearly see the display of a lifestyle that our leaders are living that is not commensurate to, for instance, the salaries that they receive. And this is something that they're doing so openly. I mean, you cannot tell me that the president is blind to these things. You cannot tell me that he's not seeing what is happening, you know?
That's what's coming up. I am Eddie Micah Jr., and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
The Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project is a global network of investigative journalists founded in 2006, specializing in organized crime and corruption. Now, since 2012, OCCRP has dedicated the Person of the Year award to recognize an individual or institution that has done the most to advance organized criminal activity and corruption in the world. Ruto's government has been accused of coming up with policies that have fueled economic instability, and protests against his government have led to violence, arrests, and disappearances, further fueling public outrage. Let's try to break things down with Ruth Ambogo, a Kenyan governance consultant, political analyst, and a lawyer by profession. I also have DW's Andrew Wasike, our correspondent in Nairobi, Kenya. Ruth, tell me what you make of the report that ranks Kenya's Ruto as the most corrupt president in the world, only behind deposed Syrian ex-president Bashar al-Assad.
It is quite an interesting way to start our year as Kenyans. In my opinion, it was a clear reflection of what Kenyans have been feeling, what Kenyans have been dealing with, and the general state of the nation when the report came out. I think I saw the moment the organization put out, the link to, or rather the tweet that, people could nominate who stands out as the most corrupt leader globally. And I saw lots of Kenyans, expressing themselves and speaking, and the tone of their messages or of their nominations sort of was an opportunity for Kenyans to speak to their president directly. So it seemed to me as an opportunity for Kenyans to, insist on the message that they have been carrying on along through the year, that they are dissatisfied, that they are angry, that the state of the nation is not where it ought to be, and that Kenyans are suffering. We have seen what has been happening across the country, or rather throughout the past year, with the violation of human rights that's been ongoing, excessive use of force by police on innocent Kenyans who are expressing themselves, the general laws that have been passed by our legislators that Kenyans have expressed themselves as to these laws and have stated directly or clearly that these laws in a way putting us in a position where as a people we feel that we are oppressed, the abductions and were mostly stemming from the unjust or laws that seemed to be unjust, laws that did not seem to cater for what Kenyans are feeling, where Kenyans are, the state of the economy. And so the anger that arose out of it and carried on throughout the year was expressed now at these nominations. And Kenyans were just speaking out and saying, look, we are not happy with you. This is it. And in my opinion, it is honestly a true reflection of where we are as a country.
Sounds like a very long list of issues people have with their president, William Ruto. Andrew, you've been speaking to people on the ground. How are they overall reacting to their president Ruto nominated as the most corrupt president in the world?
Thank you very much, Eddie, and Happy New Year to the both of you. Kenyans are going crazy about this. Social media is abuzz with many Kenyans saying, "We told you so." This is, I did a report on it. One, you'll see that many Kenyans are angry. There's, I would say, sort of like vindication and even humor. There are memes that have flooded platforms like Twitter and Facebook about this. So Kenyans are saying that we told you so. We are being, we don't like how this leader is the country right now, how he's working and with the high taxes and all that. So they have come out to say, you see, okay, this is an independent report that has been released. It has nothing to do with us, and it says exactly what we have been saying. Because Eddie, we have covered all these protests in Nairobi, Kenya, Mombasa, all towns, I think, across Kenya. They are saying the same things. The levels of corruption are high. We are losing money because of this and that. And I think this is the sentiment that Kenyans have. Maybe they think that with Ruto at the helm as the president, his government, this includes all the government officials, members of parliament and all that, are who got him there, you know, because corruption has been on another level. You cannot compare it to the previous governments, and that is why there's a lot of anger.
Let me come to you, Ruth, because according to the OCCRP, they put together this list. This is a quote from them. Ruto's government has faced accusations of greed and corruption with policies that have fueled economic instability. But is it fair to put the full blame on the president? What about members of his government who may be using their positions to enrich themselves?
Well, you know, there's this famous statement that is always alluded to when it comes to leadership and responsibility, that the buck stops with the leader, the buck stops with the president, that if he truly wished the best for the country, that if he truly knew where he wanted to take this country, if he truly was intentional about fulfilling the promises that he made to Kenyans while he was campaigning, when he was inaugurated, and as he keeps saying that he wants to fight corruption, if he was truly committed to the well-being of the country, to the fight against corruption, we would not be seeing the wastage that we are seeing today. I mean, we've had presidents in the past. For instance, I would always go back to referencing our former president, the late President Mwai Kibaki. During his regime, we saw very minimal corruption. I mean, there was corruption back then, but very minimal. It wasn't to the extent that we are seeing it today. And unfortunately, the thing is that unfortunately, you can clearly see the display of a lifestyle that our leaders are living that is not commensurate to, for instance, the salaries that they receive. And this is something that they're doing so openly. I mean, you cannot tell me that the president is blind to these things. You cannot tell me that he's not seeing what is happening, you know. And you know, sadly to speak, in this country, there have been reports in the past where you have a leader being indicted of corruption, and then shortly thereafter, the president takes over, or rather this regime takes over, and these cases are dropped, and these people are actually appointed to very senior positions of influence. Don't we learn from the past? You know, are we turning a blind eye to the realities that are so clear before our eyes? I mean, the president, as I have said, if he was committed to fighting corruption, he would have done it. We would not be seeing leaders displaying opulence as they have done, especially this past 1 or 2 years, displaying opulence, people's lifestyles changing suddenly, leaders not even being emotionally intelligent enough to notice that Kenyans are suffering, and going on public platforms and bragging about how they are owning pairs of shoes that cost thousands of dollars, and yet their constituents are dying of hunger. Their constituents do not have jobs. The people that they govern are living in squalor, not knowing where to get the next meal from. So I think it's just the reality that he can see what is happening. And unfortunately, there have been stories that have come out that suggest that he could be part of what is happening. So we cannot just say that, you know what, the president is excused from this. Let us look at the people around him. Maybe they are the ones involved in this. As a leader, the buck stops with you. For example, today, if we are auditing a company today, and the company is running into losses, we never start saying, oh, it's the accounts people, it's the HR department. At the end of the day, we always look at the management. We always look at who is the CEO. We always say, that this company is going down because of this particular CEO. So at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. If he truly wanted to stop corruption, he would have stopped it now. If he truly wanted to improve the state of the nation, he would have done it now. He would have taken action. He would be instituting investigations into allegations of corruption and ensuring that, due process is followed. Persons who are accused of being involved in corruption are taken to court. They are subjected to the judicial system. And if found guilty, they're out of their jobs. Simple.
Right. I mean, I'm going to stay with you, Ruth, because we're highlighting corruption. And, corruption may not always involve financial gain, but can also mean the unjust use of one's position and authority or abuse of office. Are there key instances where President Ruto has abused his power and violated the Constitution?
I would say that if one says no, they are truly a stranger in Jerusalem, because we have been highlighted globally the past 1 year for ridiculous things that have been taking place, persons charged with, the security forces, our police, using excessive force on persons who are just trying to express themselves. And I think the whole conversation about civil liberties that we have, the freedom of expression, the right to assemble, the right to picket, these are rights and liberties that we are guaranteed by the Constitution that seem to have been violated directly under the watch of the president. I think for me, the saddest day that we saw as a country, that we witnessed as a country, was mid last year, June, when young people, took to the streets and they were sprayed with bullets all over. And the fact that months later, we have our leaders outrightly taking up the stage, and even the president himself at some point denying that, this ever happened. I hosted and I housed 2 abductees from last year, during that particular period, mid last year. And these are young people who are just expressing themselves, who care about the country, who wanted to see change. And the kind of torture they went through was unexplainable. Young people who now moving forward have to live with mental health issues, have to deal with anxiety, cannot be able to live their daily lives normally anymore, because they are constantly in fear. You walk with them outside, they are constantly checking the environment. They are now on medication, they are now going through therapy, and these are just those who managed to survive. We are going back to the 90s, and I fear that we might find ourselves in a situation where, I remember my grandparents used to tell me that in the 90s, when Moi was the president back then, even the mere sight of 2 people seated somewhere and just having a conversation, it would give rise to suspicions that you were probably plotting something against the president. I think we need to get to a point where the president realizes that, not everybody will like you. There's always this quote that says, if you want everybody to like you, do not go into politics, try selling ice cream. You must realize that as a leader and as a politician, not everybody will agree with what you do and what you say. So you must get to a point where you tolerate people's opinion and let people live and be and do your job. I'm very sure that if the president was doing things the right way, we would not be having young people online, making all sorts of jokes about him, caricatures of him. We would just be fine and living our lives.
Right. Very detailed breakdown there. Thank you very much, Ruth. And Andrew, while we're talking about all of this, has there been any official statement about the report, from the government? And if any, what does it say?
So far, there has not been any reaction from the government. I
Mm.
don't expect one to come, because whenever such statements come out, it's on only rare occasions that they denounce such statements or even respond to it. Because if they respond to it, they kind of will also add fuel to the fire. So in my experience, I have not seen the government respond to such statements, and I don't expect a response, because this was very, very personal. It targeted our head of state directly. So I don't think any statement is coming from the government or any government officials.
Kenya has the potential of being one of Africa's most dynamic democracies and thriving economies. So how can reports like these help get the country on that path of stronger democracy and thriving economical growth?
I think reports like this should always to a leadership that cares about its people, should always alert them that, you know what, this is an indicator things are not going well. Can we go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, how did we get here? What needs to change? Do we need to pacify the people by having honest and genuine conversations with them? Could it be an opportunity for the president to even sit down with elected leaders and actually just have a conversation with them about their attitude towards the people that they govern? Because you see, I feel, in my opinion, I genuinely feel that to a large extent it stems from the attitude that the leaders have towards the people that they govern. This
Right.
very dismissive attitude, this very, like just the other day, one of the leaders claimed that the abductees are in Airbnbs chilling with their girlfriends. This are and you're making such statements when fathers are literally crying their hearts out in courtrooms, begging, for the release of their sons and daughters. So I think it should be an indicator to the leadership that we are on the wrong path. As a leadership, they need to sit down and figure out where things are going wrong, because the reality of the matter is that 2027 is literally, let's just say, 1.5 years away, because you know how our electoral system is. People start campaigning way too early. We are almost, we could say, 2.5 years or 2 years gone ever since we had our elections. What has been done so far? How can we catch up and get the people to calm down and have genuine conversations and change the way we are doing things? Because if we don't, we are clearly going to lose it. Just the other day, the president admitted that Tanzania has overtaken Kenya and how business is done, and he seems to be very proud about it. That is not something to be happy about as a country. And as much as we are talking about regional, unity and regional collaboration, you must ask yourself, as a country, why would you be so proud when things like this, when reports like that come out?
Exactly. Still with you, Ruth, as we wrap this up, what role or what more should civil society organizations do to ensure that corruption doesn't entrench itself deeper in society?
Well, I think the first thing that civil society organizations need to do is continue educating the society, continue having conversations with the society, and just public civic engagement with the community to educate them on how to identify corruption, how to deal with it, because they need to take a forefront in initiating conversations around recalling of leaders, because I don't think we've done it as a country. We probably need to start doing it as a way of sending a message to these leaders that, you know what, when you're elected to a position of power, there are expectations of you to deliver. And if you don't, we as the people have the power to actually call you out of that seat and get you out and bring in people who can actually deliver. And finally, we still need to engage the society about, the electoral process way before the election season comes. We need to start educating our community about what kind of leaders they should elect whenever the electoral system or cycle comes. Because when we don't have these conversations in advance or throughout the leadership, the entire leadership period, when a regime is in power, people tend to forget. And when elections come, we get caught up in the euphoria. We forget what qualities of a good leader, who stands out as a good leader, or what kind of leaders should we vote for. So I mean, for me, that
Right.
is my take about what civil society organizations should do.
Right. Thank you for those strong words. I really enjoyed this conversation. Ruth Ambogo, Kenyan governance consultant, political analyst, and a lawyer by profession. Thank you very much. Also, DW's Andrew Wasike, correspondent in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you both.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
Are there any leadership best practices on the continent? That goes without saying. For example, President Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia has made significant efforts to fight corruption and promote good governance since taking office in 2021, a stark contrast to the corruption in Equatorial Guinea. Let's get more on this from Kathy Short, our correspondent in Zambia. Hello, Kathy. Comparing him to his predecessor, Edgar Lungu, how has Zambia under President Hichilema attempted to fight corruption and embrace good governance?
Okay, so I must give context to this question because corruption has been a major problem in Zambia for many years. So petty and grand corruption involving ordinary Zambians and the elite, the big people in government especially, was very common. Donors even froze funding to the Ministry of Health due to large-scale corruption. And even a 2022 report by the International Monetary Fund, attested to the fact that there was grand corruption in big projects, infrastructure projects. It indicated that, and they went to the friends of the president and the previous government, which was the Patriotic Front. So there was massive corruption. And Hakainde Hichilema, who's the current president, wrote on the campaign, during the campaigns, emphasized the need, to stamp out corruption. And he actually described it as horrific. And then started reforms. And one of the things that we have seen is the introduction of an economic crimes court, which has been operating since 2022. And so many cases have been dealt with. According to government media, government's effort to recover stolen assets and money has yielded over $38 million and about 43,000 US dollars in proceeds of crime that have been forfeited to the state between 2020 and 2024. So it's been up and running, and this economic crimes court is under the High Court of Zambia. And then also one thing I must mention is that for the first time, Zambia has a very rich president. President Hichilema is a rich man. So we don't know whether that has got something to do with him, not tolerating corruption. But those that are very close to him have spoken about him being a very, very firm man, a man that doesn't tolerate, stealing and corruption. And also there's a saying in the, these high offices that President Hakainde Hichilema is tight with money. And when there was Edgar Lungu, money was flowing freely for everybody. There was so much money, Eddie, that in taxis, people were sharing thousands of US dollars in the cars. I'm not talking about small money.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking about money to buy houses, big properties, and things like that, all happening here in Zambia. So it's been bad.
It looks like there's a new sheriff in town who is actively trying to fight corruption and trying to do something about it. You talked about the economic crimes court that you say is getting back some monies that were stolen or looted. So how are Zambians reacting to how their president is running the country?
There are mixed feelings, mixed reactions. Others feel that he's doing the right thing, while those from the previous government do not think like that. They think it's political witch hunt, because we've seen the former First Lady, the wife to Edgar Lungu, also having her 15 flats forfeited to the state. We've seen also her son forfeiting almost 100 vehicles to the state. And then the two daughters also being persons of interest in terms of the corruption fight. Right now, Lungu's daughter, who's in the US, has been put on the most wanted list by the Drug Enforcement Commission, which is one of the law enforcement agencies.
Now, while President Hichilema has made notable strides in fighting corruption and promoting good governance, it's important to remember that this is an ongoing battle. Experts say only time will tell if he is an exemplary African leader. Challenges persist, and the effectiveness of his policies is still being tested. But so far, Hichilema's approach to governance has represented a positive shift from his predecessor.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
Join the conversation on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Don't forget to click follow so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. And I am Eddie Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.